big and it's better. Welcome to the Law Abiding Citizen podcast, brought to you and sponsored by Munangati and Associates, the hallmark of legal service excellency in Zimbabwe. It's your friendly neighborhood lawyer, the law orator, Tulani Mututa, and today on the LAC podcast, we are going to be talking about Sweat for Sweet, your labor rights in Zimbabwe. I am joined on this episode by Mr. Tinomuda Ishedue, an excellent labor lawyer and an even better friend of mine. Tino, welcome to the LAC podcast.
Thank you very much. I'd like to also thank Munangati and Associates for affording us this opportunity to address labor law and the rights that stem from labor law.
I could not agree with you anymore there, Tino. Labor law is the bedrock of the legal system in Zimbabwe because either you're an independent employer or you're a contractual employer, the labor rights in Zimbabwe have a bearing with how exactly you deal with the employment relationships that you have. So, as Munangati and Associates, we are doing this show to raise awareness about labor rights. So, Tino, let's get into it. Who is Tinomuda Ishedue? How exactly are you a labor lawyer? And what is this advent of labor rights that we keep hearing about?
As you alluded before, my name is Tinomuda Ishedue. I am a legal practitioner under the employ of Dube Manikai Legal Practitioners. Basically, my love for labor law stems from, my mentor, Mr. Wacha.
Okay.
And I'm currently under the labor litigation department.
Okay.
So that's where I got my roots and got to sink my feet into employment law.
Okay, wonderful, Tino. We're glad to have you, and we really trust that the insights that you have on labor law will be important for this episode. So Section 65 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe provides what are known as labor rights in Zimbabwe. Tino, where did these labor rights come from? Because I understand that before the advent of the Constitution we have, there were no explicitly spelled out labor rights in terms of the Constitution.
Yes, that is true. I think before the 2013 Constitution, the only statute that addressed labor law rights was basically the Labor Act.
Okay.
And it's only upon the enactment of the Constitution that they decide to address
Yes.
these labor issues
Okay.
in terms of the Constitution.
All right.
And they also introduced the rights to being, how can I say, not to be chased, but being treated.
Yes. Okay. So I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Tino. So basically, the labor constitutional rights have essentially become the supreme law regarding how employment relationships are conducted. So let's get into it. What are the more pertinent features of Section 65, particularly the rights specifically that are provided therein? I know for a fact that there is this right provided there to ensure that all employees have a fair and reasonable wage, and also even the right to strike, which is something that's quite controversial.
Yes, they do emphasize the issue of equal pay.
Yes.
For male and female employees.
Okay.
Which is something that we've noticed even with the new amendment of the Labor Act. They've implemented and included in the Labor Act.
All right.
Now, the right to strike, in as much as it's part of the Constitution, I believe it's something that's very difficult.
Yes.
And also, it is only limited to employees. So, therefore, personnel of the security forces, basically, your police, your army, basically, you're part of the Zimbabwe National Army, are wanted or afforded this right to strike.
Okay, wonderful. And how exactly are they checks and balances ensuring that this right to strike is enjoyed peacefully and also it is enjoyed in a way that is in terms of the Constitution?
I believe that they've put in mechanisms where they say that you don't have to have a strike that involves violence.
Okay.
And it's also something that has been included again in the new Labor Act as well.
All right.
That it has to be well within the legal. It has to be legal, basically.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, and also if you don't then act within the confines of the Labor Act, it will then be a crime.
Okay. So from your experience, Tino, as a labor lawyer, have you seen that the result of strikes or this collective job action actually yield anything beneficial for the employees?
To be honest, it has not yielded anything. It has led to mass arrests of several employees who try to strike and probably conduct illegal strikes.
Yes.
And however, the Labor Act has also included certain provisions which allow for parties to engage.
Yes.
I believe in government they have a tripartite agreements where it's the government and the employees that engage each other.
All right.
To then negotiate on issues regarding wages and money.
Okay. Wonderful. The other thing I wanted to discuss, for the benefit of our listeners, is the issue of this maternal leave that has been given to female employees. A lot of people have been clamoring, requiring that there be that paternal maternity leave as well, or paternal leave as well, for the fathers to also enjoy the leave that is accorded to female employees. What would be your take on that, Nakuna?
I'll believe that right across the Limpopo, South Africa, it's something that they believe in, it's something that they've included in their legislature. However, we're still waiting for the legislature to then take action and include paternal rights. But I believe it's something that any father who's an employee should be awarded, should be given the opportunity to spend time with their children.
Yes. Wonderful. Viewers and listeners, today we are talking about Sweat for Sweet, labor rights in Zimbabwe. I am joined by Mr. Tinumudaishe Dube, a labor lawyer with Dube Manika and Wacha. So stay tuned to the LAC podcast. We're just going to take a short break and come back and discuss how exactly you can learn how to enforce your labor rights in terms of the Constitution.
Hi, my name is Charlie Jackson. I'm an estate lawyer. Enjoy watching the Law Abiding Citizen podcast.
Welcome back to the LAC podcast. My name is Tulani Mututa, the law orator and your friendly neighborhood lawyer. Today we are talking about Sweat for Sweet, labor rights in Zimbabwe. We are back on the second segment and we want to discuss a scenario that has come before us as the LAC podcast, where we had people reaching out to understand, how exactly they can enforce their labor rights that are provided for in terms of the Constitution. How exactly can they do this?
So in regards to enforcement, there is a multi-layer enforcement mechanisms.
Okay.
So it starts off at the labor officer.
Okay.
And then if your employer is currently under what we consider a National Employment Council, then they will go before a designated agent, which basically does the same function as the labor officer.
All right.
Where they will discuss and probably help adjudicate over your matters if you feel like there was an unfair labor practice. Okay.
So basically we have this remedy or this mechanism that operates as something that is readily available. The procedures are simple and it is there to accord quick resolution of disputes. So in most cases, do these conciliation mechanisms work in according the grievances that employees have and also resolving impasses between the employer and the employee?
Yes, they do actually assist, because the whole purpose of conciliation is to help parties to probably reach a settlement.
Okay.
Before proceeding to then go to what we consider to any court, basically.
Okay.
The labor court.
Yes. Wonderful. Especially with regards to the labor court, our viewers and listeners want to understand what that mechanism is for and how exactly they can approach it for relief.
So it's well in line with our doctrine of exhausting domestic evidence. We have to start off with the labor officer, the designated agent, before we then proceed to the labor court.
Okay.
Because they then want all our issues to be addressed.
Okay.
And then we can just then file an appeal to the labor court.
Okay.
And then in that instance, we then proceed to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
So that's the only means that they can then proceed to.
All right. So say someone is aggrieved by the decision of the labor court. Recourse is then available for the Supreme Court. So what exactly is the role of the Supreme Court in these labor matters?
The role, I guess we can't say it's an upper budget.
Okay. All right.
But the role of the Supreme Court is to award a disgruntled employee or employer the opportunity of their matter adjusted in ethics court.
Okay.
Now it will allow you to then appeal that decision made by the lower court or tribunal.
Yes.
And award you an opportunity to have it properly addressed.
Okay.
And I believe the Supreme Court, with the judges that are there with so much experience and a wealth of knowledge, that can then be used to be properly address your issue.
Okay, wonderful. And that is really why we need this mechanism, because even if you have these labor rights, I think the most important thing is how exactly you can enforce these labor rights. Tino, just before we round up the show, do you have anything you want to say to our viewers and listeners in relation to treating their labor matters? As we always say on the LAC podcast, ignorance of the law is not a defense, and it has never been and will never be a defense.
Yes, to any employee, the best advice I'll give you is make sure you thoroughly go through your employment contract.
Okay.
Make sure you also engage any trade unionist or any
Yes.
legal practitioner just for advice.
Yes.
To inquire on the procedure
Yes.
and what can be done.
Yes.
You do not want to be litigious and bring matters that do not have any merit
Yes.
to the courts, and you feel like your issues are not being addressed within a timely manner.
Okay.
When you could have avoided making mistakes.
Okay. Wonderful. Viewers and listeners, there you have it from the expert. Have a valid employment contract. Know its terms. Know the implications. Know exactly how you can enforce your labor rights so that when the day comes, you can have a merited case, as said by our labor law expert. Viewers and listeners, thank you for tuning in to the LAC podcast. Today, we're talking about Sweat for Sweet, your labor rights in Zimbabwe, how exactly they are provided for in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution, and how exactly you can get relief and enforce your labor rights. So until next time, once again, my name is Tulani Mututa, your friendly neighborhood lawyer, the law orator. Stay legal wise and stay law abiding.